I woke up to the faint sound of movement right beside my bed. My eyes were barely open when I noticed my son-in-law, Ethan, crouched down, going through the drawer of my nightstand like a man on a mission. It did not take me long to figure out what he was after: the keys to my safe. I could have spoken up, could have stopped him cold, but instead I chose to hold my tongue and watch how far he was willing to go. When his hand finally closed around the keys and he opened that safe, the look on his face said it all. Ethan gasped like the air had been ripped out of his lungs. What he found in there burned itself into his memory, something he would carry for the rest of his life. And me? I knew right then that nothing would ever be the same between our families again. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. It started off like any other Sunday evening at my place. My daughter Melissa and her husband Ethan showed up with their 2 kids, the same way they had done nearly every week for the past 8 years. The kitchen island I had built with my own 2 hands last spring, because I could not afford to hire a contractor, was still crowded with the dishes from the big dinner I had cooked. From the living room came the noise of children's cartoons blaring from the 75-inch television I had surprised them with last Christmas. That screen had swallowed up almost my entire tax refund, but seeing the kids glued to it had made the splurge feel worth it at the time. Ethan had been off all night, fiddling with his phone between bites of the lasagna I had worked on for hours. Melissa kept going on about their upcoming trip to Hawaii and dropping little comments about how expensive the resort fees had turned out to be. I just smiled, nodded, and in the back of my mind started doing the usual math, wondering if I had enough space left on my credit card to help them out again. It would not have been the first time. By the time they left around 9, I was left to face the mess on my own. I scraped the plates, washed my grandmother's old china carefully by hand, dishes I only used for family dinners, and packed leftovers into containers I knew Melissa would scoop up tomorrow. My back was sore from standing over the stove all day, but one look at my grandkids grinning ear to ear while devouring my chocolate chip cookies made every ache feel like a small price. Around 11, I finally made it to bed. My prescription heating pad had already warmed the sheets for my back pain, the kind that had gotten worse ever since I had helped Ethan move heavy furniture into their new house a month earlier. The bottle of costly pain medication sat unopened on the nightstand. I had been rationing the pills, stretching them out after spending what was left of my medicine budget on school supplies for the kids. That was when I heard it, the sound of my front door easing open. The key I had given them years ago, back when I thought it would only be used for emergencies, was now letting Ethan into my home in the middle of the night. His footsteps echoed across the ceramic tile I had installed just 2 years back to make the house more inviting for family gatherings. He moved through the place like it was his own, sidestepping the new sectional sofa I had bought so everyone could pile in together for movie nights. Then his steps drew closer, straight toward my bedroom. From the thin strip of light under the door, I could see the beam of his phone flashlight sweeping across the floor. My chest tightened, my breath shallow, as I forced myself to stay perfectly still. The door opened slowly, barely making a sound. Ethan slipped into the room with the kind of ease that comes from practice. He went right for the nightstand, the drawer where I kept my reading glasses, vitamins, and the small brass key that unlocked my safe. I watched his hands work carefully, sliding through my private things until he found what he wanted. Every instinct in me screamed to sit up, to demand answers. But something stronger, a gut-deep feeling, kept me frozen. It told me this was a moment I had to see through, that whatever was about to unfold mattered more than my own fear. Ethan crept to the corner where my fireproof safe sat tucked behind my antique dresser. I had bought that safe 3 years earlier to protect the important family papers, some heirloom jewelry, and other valuables that could never be replaced. The soft electronic beeps filled the room as he punched in the code. Then, a gasp. Loud and raw, he staggered back like the ground had shifted under him, nearly dropping his phone. Even in the dim glow, I could see his face twisted in shock, his whole body trembling. Ethan stood frozen, staring into that safe, as if whatever he saw inside had turned his entire view of our family upside down. I could not lie still any longer. Slowly, I pushed myself upright and reached over to switch on the lamp by my bed. The faint click of the switch seemed to explode in the silence like a gunshot. "Looking for something in particular, Ethan?" He jerked around so fast he nearly lost his footing, his face going pale as chalk. Behind him, the safe door hung wide open, and his hands were still trembling like leaves in a storm. For a long moment, he just froze, his mouth opening and closing, no words forming, like a deer caught in headlights. I can explain," he finally managed to stammer, though every word cracked and broke apart in his throat. "Can you?" I asked, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. My knees ached, stiff from staying still so long. "Because I would truly like to hear what explanation you have for sneaking into my house at midnight and digging through my safe." Ethan's eyes darted around the room, desperate, like he was searching for a window he could dive through. Melissa and I, we were worried about you," he blurted out. "Your health, your money. We thought if we could see your paperwork, maybe we could help you get things in order." The lie was so weak, so flimsy, I almost pitied him. Almost. Worried about my finances? I stood up, every one of my 68 years pressing down on my aching joints. "Ethan, in just the past 5 years, I have given you and Melissa over $180,000. I paid for your wedding when your original venue fell through. I covered Melissa's hospital bills when her second pregnancy nearly ended in tragedy. I co-signed the loan on your house when the bank laughed at your credit. I bought your kids' clothes, their Christmas gifts, even their camp tuition in the summer." With every word, I could see him shrinking smaller. That is different," he muttered weakly. "You offered. You wanted to help." "I offered because I love my daughter, because I adore my grandchildren," I said, my voice calm but hard as stone. "But tell me, Ethan, what exactly did you see in my safe that rattled you so badly you gasped like you had seen a ghost?" He flicked a glance back at the safe, then quickly looked away. "Nothing. Just a lot of papers. I did not expect so many documents." Another lie. I walked over, peered inside, and knew instantly what had shaken him. Stacked neatly in manila folders were 10 years of records. Every transfer I had made to Melissa and Ethan, every receipt, every loan document where I had risked my own home for their business ideas, and one folder that carried a title written in black marker, Family Investment Tracking. It contained an exact ledger of every dollar I had sacrificed for them. But I knew that was not the folder that had drained the color from his face. "Ethan," I said quietly, pulling out the one he feared most. "You saw the life insurance papers, did you not?" His skin went ghost white. "I do not know what you mean." "The life insurance policies where Melissa is listed as the sole beneficiary," I said evenly, "the ones worth $850,000. The very policies you and Melissa have brought up more times than I can count, the ones you urged me to increase for the good of the family." Ethan's breathing sped up, shallow and ragged. "That is not true. We never." "What rattled you," I cut in, "was seeing the amendment notarized just last month." I pulled out the single sheet of paper and held it up. The one that changes Melissa from sole beneficiary to splitting everything between my grandchildren. The money is locked in trust until they turn 30. The silence that followed pressed down like a weight. Ethan's lips moved, but no words came. His face was a portrait of guilt and fear. "You thought I was some foolish old man, easy to manipulate?" I said, my tone still level. "You thought you could bleed me dry and one day collect a payday when I was gone. What you found tonight proves otherwise. I have been keeping records of everything. Every phone call, every request, every push to raise my life insurance." "That is not true," he burst out, his voice shaking. "We love you. We never thought about your death." I looked at him. This man who had shared my table, eaten my food, accepted my money, and apparently dreamed of the day my death would fatten his bank account. "Get out of my house, Ethan. Please, let me explain. Out, now, and tell Melissa our family dinners are finished." Indefinitely. After Ethan stormed out, I sat there for what felt like half the night, staring at the open safe like it had suddenly grown teeth. The silence in my bedroom was different now. Not empty. Charged. It carried weight, like the air right before a thunderstorm. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't busy calculating how much I could scrape together for Melissa's next emergency. Instead, I was thinking about what came next. When daylight finally crept in, I walked my house like I was seeing it for the first time. The hardwood floors gleamed beneath my feet, the same floors I had refinished after sinking $15,000 into Ethan's failed restaurant venture, money that disappeared when the place shut down 6 months later. My eyes landed on the water heater I had replaced just last Christmas. $3,200 gone in one shot because theirs had unexpectedly broken right before the holidays. Then I paused in the guest bedroom with its bunk beds and Disney wallpaper. I had charged nearly $3,000 to my credit card to make that room special for my grandchildren because my savings had already been drained by their last so-called crisis. Every wall, every corner of my home carried the same message. I was a man who had poured everything he had into people who treated me like a walking bank account. I brewed myself coffee in the pricey espresso machine Melissa had hinted about. Good coffee she missed so much. They used that machine every single Sunday, but never once offered to chip in for it. As I sat at the kitchen counter, memories started coming at me like a flood. Ethan borrowing $8,000 for car repairs, then showing up days later with a shiny new motorcycle. Melissa crying at Christmas about how she couldn't afford presents for the kids, so I spent my whole Social Security check on gifts, only to see photos pop up weeks later of their trip to Maldives. The countless dinners where they unloaded their money troubles onto me, while sitting at a table I had furnished, eating food I had bought, served on cookware I had purchased. By noon, my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen in a long time. George Doyle, my old neighbor from when I lived across town. We had kept in touch here and there, but not much lately. Well, look who's still kicking, Frank's voice rumbled through the line with that familiar mix of sarcasm and warmth. How's retirement treating you, you old bastard? Can't complain. Still vertical, still drinking overpriced coffee, I said, almost smiling in spite of myself. So what's with the call in the middle of a Tuesday? Don't tell me you're finally ready to admit I was right about the Mets. Ha! Not in this lifetime, he chuckled, then his tone shifted. Actually, hell, I don't even know how to start this. You remember my son Kevin, the one with the fancy business degree and a new scheme every other week? Yeah, the guy who hit you up for money for a food truck that never even got off the ground. That's him. Well, it turns out he's been robbing me blind. Forging my name on checks, draining accounts I did not even realize he could touch. I nearly spilled my coffee. Frank, what are you saying? Found out yesterday when the bank called about an overdraft. My own kid's been playing bank teller with my money for over a year. We're talking $40,000, maybe more. My retirement savings? Gone. The college fund for the grandkids? Wiped out. Jesus, Frank. Did you confront him? Oh, I confronted him, George said, his voice tightening. You know what he told me? Dad, I was going to pay it back. I just needed some capital to get my consulting business off the ground. Like I'm supposed to be some angel investor instead of the father he just cleaned out. His voice cracked, and I could hear the pain under the anger. And the kicker? His wife Rachel's in on it. She called me yesterday, bawling, saying they'll make things right. But in the next breath, she's asking if I can cover their mortgage for the month because, and I quote, the kids need stability. They've got some nerve, I muttered. You know what eats me up the most? Frank's voice hardened. All those times Kevin sat with me, real casual, asking about my will, about my insurance, always so friendly. Dad, make sure you update your beneficiaries, keep everything in order. I thought he was just being responsible, looking out for me. My stomach turned over. What do you mean by that? Last month, George said, his voice tight, Kevin brought some insurance buddy of his over to my house. The guy gave me a whole pitch about doubling my life insurance policy, said it was smart planning for the family's future. And now I can't stop thinking, was my own son running the numbers on what I'd be worth dead? The phone suddenly weighed a ton in my hand. Frank, that's twisted, he cut in. Yeah, that's one word for it. Another is realizing I raised a kid who looks at me like a payday instead of his father. His voice went quiet for a moment. I keep replaying it in my head. Did I miss the signs? Was I just blind? Or did I want so badly to believe my son cared about me more than my savings that I ignored the truth? I gripped the phone tighter, the image of Ethan's face flashing in my mind, the shock in his eyes when he saw those insurance papers. So what are you going to do? Hell if I know, George muttered. Part of me wants to call the police and let them deal with him. But he's still my boy. And those grandkids, they didn't ask to be born to parents who treat their fathers like walking wallets. But I can't keep being their personal cash machine either. Frank, let me ask you, when did it really start? The money part, I mean. He thought about it. Looking back, maybe 3 years ago, it started small. Car trouble, doctor bills, things that sounded real enough. But it really kicked into high gear after my heart attack 2 years back. When I was in the hospital, Kevin stepped in to help, paid bills, sorted through my paperwork. That must have been when he figured out how to get into my accounts. We both went quiet, sitting with the weight of what that meant. Why are you telling me this? I asked after a while. George let out a heavy breath. Because you're the only person I know who would actually get it. We're two old men who busted our backs our whole lives, saved where we could, and thought we were doing right by our kids. And here we are, robbed by the very people we built everything for. We ended up talking for over an hour. His situation was uglier than mine, straight theft instead of manipulation. But the betrayal felt the same. That bone-deep ache when you realize the ones you trusted most were just bleeding you dry. When I finally hung up, something clicked in me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a cycle that would keep repeating, passed down to my grandkids if I didn't put a stop to it. The very next morning, I drove downtown to my old office, the accounting firm where I had spent 35 years of my life. Linda Prescott, an old colleague of mine, was now running the forensic accounting department. I didn't bother calling ahead. I walked in carrying 3 heavy boxes filled with records. I need your professional eyes on this, I told her, dropping them on the conference table. And before you open a single folder, I need you to understand, this is bigger than money. This is about people who thought I'd never stand up for myself. I laid it all out. Bank records, loan agreements, receipts, even photos of expensive toys they bought right after I bailed them out. With every piece of evidence, Linda's face grew darker. This is classic financial elder abuse, she said finally, her tone flat. It's the pattern. Requests that keep escalating, guilt-tripping you into paying, making you feel responsible for their problems, and these repeated conversations about life insurance. She shook her head. They weren't caring for you. They were treating you like an investment waiting to pay off. That night, I sat in my study, surrounded by the copies Linda had marked. I had thought the total damage was around $320,000, but when you factored in the loans I had co-signed, the debts I was still paying down, and the credit cards maxed out in my name, the number was closer to $480,000. But staring at that figure, I didn't feel rage anymore. Something had shifted. I wasn't reacting to their latest mess. I was planning. And for the first time in years, the plan wasn't about saving them. It was about making sure they finally faced the cost of what they had done. 3 whole days passed in the kind of silence I had almost forgotten existed. No frantic calls from Melissa asking for grocery money. No texts from Ethan about sudden car trouble. No surprise emergencies that required me to dig into my pocket. For the first time in nearly a decade, I woke up in the morning without immediately checking my bank account to see what I could still afford to hand over. But Thursday morning, the peace broke. At 7:23, my phone started buzzing. Melissa. I let it ring out. She called again and again. By the 4th time, I gave in and picked up. Dad? Her voice was high, almost shrill, barely holding back panic. Thank God you answered. We've got an emergency. Good morning to you too, Melissa. The mortgage payment bounced. The account was short. Now we've got overdraft fees, and the bank says if it isn't covered by tomorrow, foreclosure proceedings could start. We need $3,200 right away. I sipped my coffee slowly, noticing how she skipped right past hello and went straight to the money. That does sound like a problem. It is. Dad, we've never missed a payment before. If you could just transfer it this morning, we can get ahead of this. Melissa, didn't you just get a tax refund last month? What happened to that money? Well, there were other expenses. Dad, there's no time to go through it all right now. Can you help us or not? Her voice carried real desperation, but underneath it, I heard the same old assumption that I was her safety net, that every mess could be patched with my wallet. No, Melissa, I can't help you. The pause that followed stretched almost 10 seconds. Then, what do you mean you can't? You helped us last year when Ethan's business slowed down. That was last year. This is different. Dad, what's wrong with you? This isn't like you. Are you sick? Maybe you should see a doctor. There it was, the subtle jab that if I wasn't giving, I must be losing my mind. I'd heard shades of that before, but never this blatant. My mind's sharp, Melissa, sharper than it's been in a long time. But Dad, we're family. Families take care of each other. You've always said that. You're right, families do help each other. So tell me, when was the last time you helped me? She hesitated. You never ask for help, you always say you're fine. I'm not talking about money. When was the last time you called just to check in? When did you last invite me to dinner at your house? When did you offer to help with my yard or my groceries or anything at all that wasn't tied to me opening my wallet? That's not fair. We invite you over all the time. You invite me over to cook for your family, then send me home with a list of bills. That's not family, Melissa. That's a transaction. I heard her start crying then, but it didn't sound like grief. It sounded like theater. I can't believe you're being so cruel, after everything we've been through. And what exactly have we been through? Your financial disasters that I paid to fix? Ethan's failed businesses that I funded? Your vacations I couldn't afford while I bought your kids Christmas presents? Ethan's businesses weren't failures, they just needed more time. His restaurant folded in 6 months. His consulting firm never signed one client. His online shop sold 3 items before he gave up. Melissa, I handed him $47,000 for those projects. That wasn't investment. That was charity. Why are you keeping track like that? We're family. Because every dollar I gave you was a dollar I couldn't spend on my own needs, my health, my house, my future, and you never once asked if I could afford it. You just assumed. I heard Ethan in the background, whispering, coaching her. Tell him about the kids. Say they need stability. Dad, think of the grandchildren, Melissa said quickly. They need stability. They need to know they're safe in their home. The grandchildren need parents who can provide stability without draining their grandfather. They need to learn money comes from work, not manipulation. Manipulation? Dad, you're not elderly. You're just being dramatic. I'm 68 years old, Melissa. I spent 45 years building a retirement to cover me through sickness and age, and you've been stripping it away, bit by bit. And last Sunday night, I realized you and Ethan were even counting on my death to solve your money problems for good. That's not true. We'd never. Ethan broke into my house. He went through my safe. He saw the life insurance policies. He saw the records of every dollar I've ever given you. And he saw the change I made, the part where the grandchildren inherit directly through a trust you can't touch. The line went dead quiet except for muffled voices in the background. When Melissa returned, her tone had shifted. The tears were gone. Her voice was flat, icy. Fine. If that's how you want it, then don't expect to see the kids again. No Christmas, no birthdays, no family dinners. We don't need you. Melissa, threats won't change my decision. But think carefully about what you just said. You're willing to cut your children off from their grandfather because he won't pay your mortgage. What does that tell you about your priorities? It tells me you care more about money than family. No, it tells me that you do. I ended the call and powered off my phone. Linda had nailed it. This was classic financial elder abuse. The begging, the guilt, the threats, even the suggestion that I was losing my grip just because I said no. But for the first time in years, I felt something new, something I had almost forgotten the taste of. Self-respect. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the old man they could milk dry. I was a strategist with a plan, and Melissa and Ethan had no clue what was coming next. 2 weeks slid by without a single phone call. No begging for grocery money. No sudden car troubles. No guilt-soaked texts about the grandkids missing their grandfather. Just quiet. For the first time in years, I lived the way retirement was supposed to feel. Reading books I had bought ages ago but never cracked open, taking long walks through the park, even savoring my morning orange juice without a knot in my stomach. Then my lawyer's office called, and the peace shattered like glass. Mr. Whitaker, this is Clara from Elaine Marshall's office. We've received some unusual paperwork regarding your case. It's urgent that we speak today. An hour later, I was sitting across from Elaine in her conference room, staring at a stack of legal documents that made my blood run cold. Someone had filed a petition with the county court declaring me mentally incompetent and asking for emergency guardianship over my affairs. The petition came from your daughter, Melissa, Elaine said, her face tight with anger. She claims you're showing signs of dementia, making reckless financial choices, and that you're a danger to yourself. That's absurd. I had a full medical evaluation 2 weeks ago. My doctor said I'm perfectly healthy. I know, Elaine replied, but she submitted what appeared to be medical records backing her claims, alleged reports from Dr. Wallace about cognitive decline. She slid the papers across the table. The letterhead looked genuine, but I knew in an instant they were forgeries. Just days ago, Dr. Wallace had cleared me with a clean bill of health. She's also filed for emergency power of attorney, Elaine added. If the judge buys any of this, the court could freeze your accounts and strip you of control until a hearing. I leaned in, reading every line. These weren't clumsy fakes. They were polished. Charts, fabricated test results, even full psychological evaluations painting me as a paranoid old man losing touch with reality. Elaine, I said slowly, this isn't desperation. This is a calculated attack. It is, she agreed grimly. I checked into it further. Melissa has been laying the groundwork for months, calling your doctors, contacting your bank, even reaching out to your insurance company. She's been weaving a story about your decline. The scale of it floored me. While I had been enjoying a few quiet mornings, she had been plotting a legal takeover of my entire life. And there's more, Elaine continued. She also filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, claiming you're living in unsafe conditions, not eating properly, neglecting your medical needs. When's the hearing? I asked. Next Friday. She filed for emergency status, saying you're in immediate danger. That night, I sat in my study staring at the mountain Melissa had built against me. This wasn't about bills anymore. She was trying to erase me, legally speaking, and turn me into a ward under her control. But she had made one mistake. She thought I wouldn't see it coming. For 3 straight days, Elaine and I prepared a counterattack. We pulled my most recent medical records, financial statements, testimony from friends and neighbors. Most important of all, we brought in a forensic document examiner who confirmed Melissa's medical reports were expertly forged. That discovery alone turned her petition into a ticking time bomb for her. Digging deeper, we found out Melissa had hired an attorney who specialized in what they call emergency elder care interventions. In plain English, this man made a living by helping adult children wrestle assets away from aging parents. A legal predator. The night before the hearing, my phone rang. For the first time in weeks, Melissa's voice filled the line. No crying this time, no act. She sounded cool, almost triumphant. Dad, I know you're upset about the court petition, but this really is for your own good. You haven't been thinking clearly, and Ethan and I are worried. Melissa, I said evenly, I know about the forged medical records. There was a pause. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about the fake reports with Dr. Wallace's name. I know about the lawyer you hired. I know you've been running a campaign for months to get me declared incompetent. Dad, you're being paranoid. This is exactly why we need the court involved. No, I said, this isn't about concern. This is about control, about my assets, about turning me into your retirement plan. That's ridiculous. We love you. We're trying to protect you. Melissa, tomorrow in court, you'll find out something you never understood about me. You think I'm just some confused old man who won't fight back. But I spent 45 years in business learning how to outthink people who tried to play games with me. You've picked a fight you can't win. Dad, you don't understand. No, Melissa, you don't understand. See you in court. I ended the call, and for the first time, I felt steady. She thought she had cornered me, but what she'd really done was gift me proof of fraud and a stage to expose years of financial abuse. She thought she had set a trap. What she didn't know was that I'd been building one of my own ever since the night Ethan went through my safe. The courthouse waiting area felt like enemy ground. Melissa sat across from me beside her lawyer, a slick man in a tailored suit who called himself an elder care intervention specialist. She kept shooting me looks, half pity, half smugness, as if this whole thing was already decided in her favor. Ethan was nowhere in sight. Smart choice on their part. His presence would have reminded everyone of the break-in that started this war. When our case was called, Melissa's lawyer stood with practiced confidence. Your Honor, my client has serious concerns regarding her father's mental competence. The medical records we've provided show clear signs of decline. We ask the court to grant emergency guardianship so my client can protect her father's health and finances. He laid out their story cleanly: supposed memory lapses, fake episodes of confusion, fabricated neglect. Melissa had done her homework. I'll give her that much. Then it was Elaine's turn. She rose with the poise of someone holding all the winning cards. Your Honor, first I'd like to submit official medical records from Dr. Wallace. These include cognitive assessments taken 2 weeks ago, showing Mr. Whitaker's mental capacity is not only stable, but above average for his age. The judge studied the reports carefully. I watched as Melissa's color drained. Second, Elaine went on, handing over another file. The documents submitted by the petitioner were examined by a forensic specialist. They are sophisticated forgeries. Dr. Wallace has confirmed he never authored these reports. Melissa's lawyer leaned toward her, whispering furiously, but Elaine wasn't finished. Third, Your Honor, we intend to show this petition is part of a long-term pattern of financial elder abuse. The judge leaned forward, interest sparked. Proceed. Elaine laid everything out in order. Every loan that vanished unpaid, every sudden emergency, the escalation from small handouts to massive sums. She outlined how Melissa and Ethan pushed for changes to insurance policies, then filed for guardianship the moment I stopped handing them money. In total, Elaine concluded, our records show the petitioner extracted over $480,000 from Mr. Whitaker over 8 years. And when the money stopped, she escalated to legal fraud, using forged medical reports to strip him of his independence. The judge's face had gone from neutral to grim. There's more, Elaine added. She presented documents showing Melissa's attempt to push fraudulent power of attorney forms through the bank. This isn't concern for a parent. This is coordinated fraud. Melissa had stopped glaring at me. Her face was pale, her lawyer riffling through his files as though a missing page might save them. Your Honor, Elaine said finally, Mr. Whitaker would like to speak. I rose slowly, steadier than I had felt in years. Your Honor, my daughter is clever, but she's also been stealing from me for years while pretending it was love. This petition isn't protection, it's legalized theft. I turned to Melissa. Her tears this time looked real, but they did not move me. Melissa, your mistake was simple. You thought love made me weak. You mistook generosity for ignorance. You forgot that kindness has limits. The judge interrupted. Mr. Whitaker, do you wish to pursue criminal charges regarding these forgeries? Yes, Your Honor, and I request that Melissa and her husband be barred permanently from having any control over my finances, my medical choices, or my estate. Melissa finally spoke, her voice breaking. Dad, please, I was trying to help. We were worried about you. No, Melissa, I said, calm and certain. You were worried about the money. The judge delivered the ruling swiftly. The petition was denied with prejudice. The forged documents were handed over to the district attorney for prosecution. A restraining order was granted, keeping Melissa and Ethan away from me and my home. But I wasn't finished. As we stepped out of the courtroom, Elaine passed Melissa's lawyer a thick envelope. Civil action, she said plainly, for financial elder abuse, fraud, and emotional distress. Full restitution of $480,000 for plus punitive damages. The man's face went gray. This could ruin them. That's the point, I answered quietly. Outside the courthouse, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Melissa's voice cracked through the crowd. Dad, wait, please. We can work this out. I'll pay you back. We can fix everything. I turned to face her. For the briefest moment, I didn't see the woman who had tried to strip me of my freedom. I saw the little girl I once taught to ride a bike, the child I sat with at the kitchen table helping with her math homework, the bride I walked down the aisle. But that girl was gone. What stood in front of me was a woman who had reduced her father to nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. Melissa, I said quietly, the money was never the heart of the problem. The problem is that somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your father and started seeing me as your victim. Now, that isn't something you can repay with a check. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. But what about the kids? What about Christmas, birthdays, family dinners? You already told me I wouldn't see my grandkids unless I paid your mortgage. I reminded her. That wasn't my decision. You made it. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. And now you'll have to live with the consequences. I turned and walked away. Behind me, her voice rose, pleading, bargaining, offering promises I knew she'd never keep. But for the first time in nearly a decade, her words slid off me like water. They had no hold. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of orange juice in my hand, watching the sun spill gold across the garden Eleanor and I had once built together. My phone was switched off. My accounts were safe. My home was mine again. Untouched, unclaimed, fully mine. The next morning, the phone rang. It was George Doyle. I did it, he said, his voice steadier than I'd expected. Filed charges against Kevin. Cut him off completely. Hardest damn thing I've ever done. But you were right. Sometimes loving your kids means saying no. How are you holding up? I asked. Better than I thought I would, he admitted. Turns out when you stop being everyone's personal ATM, you find out who your real friends are. And for the first time in years, I'm actually enjoying retirement. I smiled into the quiet of my kitchen. George had found his peace, and so had I. That night, after walking out of court victorious, I sat on my back porch with a glass of orange juice in hand, letting it all sink in. For 8 long years, I'd carried a weight I couldn't even name, anxiety over money, sleepless nights, the constant sense that something in my own family was broken beyond repair. And just like that, it was gone. For the first time in nearly a decade, I felt like myself again. Even the house seemed lighter, as if Melissa and Ethan's defeat had scrubbed it clean of their presence. I wandered through each room, seeing things differently now. The massive television I had bought for family gatherings was no longer a bribe for closeness. It was mine to enjoy, guilt-free. The kitchen island I had built with my own 2 hands wasn't a stage for dinners meant to soften me up before another request. It was simply my kitchen again. I picked up the phone and called George Doyle. Well, he asked as soon as he answered. Total victory, I said. The judge saw through everything. Their forgeries are in the district attorney's hands, and I've filed a civil suit for restitution. George was quiet for a beat. Then he asked, How do you feel? Lighter? I admitted, like I can finally breathe again. I looked out at my garden glowing in the fading light. You said something that's been sticking with me, about how cutting off the money made you realize how many true friends you had. I think I get it now. I was so wrapped up in being needed by Melissa and Ethan that I forgot what it felt like to be wanted. There's a world of difference between someone calling to hear your voice and someone calling to check your balance. That's the hardest truth, George said. We want to believe family love is unconditional, but sometimes the only condition is how much they can take from you. The next morning, Elaine Marshall rang with news. Melissa's lawyer reached out, she told me. They're asking for a plea deal, no jail, in exchange for full repayment and heavy community service. What do you think? I asked. I think they finally understand this isn't a game, she replied. Actions have consequences, even when it's family, especially when it's family. Later that afternoon, while I was digging in my garden, this time enjoying it instead of calculating whether I could afford new plants, someone appeared at my gate. Vanessa, Ethan's sister, looked uneasy but determined. I owe you an apology, she said right away. As a social worker, I should have recognized what Melissa and Ethan were doing. I should have seen it sooner. I invited her in for coffee, and we sat talking for over an hour. She confessed that Ethan had been pulling the same tricks with other relatives. Borrowing money, spinning lies, leaving wreckage behind. Melissa called me last night, Vanessa added, shaking her head. She's still trying to make herself the victim. She honestly doesn't see why you won't just forgive her and move on. And what do you think? I asked. I think you're finally teaching her the lesson she missed years ago, that love doesn't mean covering for someone's worst habits. Real family has boundaries. Real love comes with respect, not just endless access to another person's wallet. When Vanessa left, she turned at the door. Not all of us in Ethan's family supported what they were doing. Some of us were glad to see you fight back. That night, I realized something bigger than court victories or money. What I had reclaimed wasn't just my retirement or my independence, it was my identity. For 8 years, I had let Melissa and Ethan define me as the fixer, the ATM, the endless resource. I'd started to believe that my worth was measured only in dollars. The trial had forced me to say, out loud and without apology, that I am more than that. I'm not a victim, I'm not a bank, I'm a man, a father, and I am worthy of respect. I thought about my grandchildren and felt that old pang in my chest, but for the first time I saw those moments clearly. Every hug, every "I love you, Grandpa" had been choreographed under Melissa's shadow, followed by a request for money tied to her agenda. They weren't free gestures of love, they were props in a performance I had been paying for. Maybe someday, when they're older, they'll come find me on their own. Maybe we'll build something real without the weight of manipulation hanging over us. Or maybe they won't. And if they don't, that will be their choice, not mine. What I understand now is that my worth as a father, as a grandfather, as a man, isn't measured in dollar amounts. It isn't determined by how much of myself I give away to people who don't value my presence. The lesson I carry isn't just about money or even legal strategy. It's about the line between being loved and being used, the line between being valued and being exploited, the line between being someone's father and being someone's victim. For 8 years, I blurred that line. I confused generosity with love. I let fear of being alone turn me into an enabler. I bought silence instead of respect, and all I got in return was manipulation dressed up as family. Now I see it clearly. Any relationship you lose by setting a boundary was never a relationship worth keeping. That night, as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt something I hadn't known in years. Peace. Real, quiet, steady peace. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but I knew one thing for certain. It wouldn't bring the old anxiety of wondering how much I'd have to pay just to be loved. For the first time in almost a decade, I was going to sleep as myself. Not Melissa's ATM, not Ethan's bailout fund, not anyone's financial safety net. Just a man who had finally learned that the most loving thing you can sometimes give your family isn't money. It's consequences. It's boundaries. It's the chance to grow into better people. And that lesson? That lesson was worth every penny it cost me to learn. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. And when you're ready for the next story, just click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.